My professor of pastoral care at the seminary, Dr. Alan Cole, wrote a book about grief called Good Mourning. He has a lot of good things to say in this book, but one of the things he describes is the idea of identification. Identification in mourning is exactly what John and his disciples are doing. Sometimes subconsciously, but other times very willingly, people live into the life of the one they lost. There is a desire when we lose someone to keep them around, in a sense. And by embodying part of their purpose or part of their personality, sometimes by trying to be for others what they were for us, sometimes by trying to live up to what we imagine they would want for us, Dr. Cole says that this can be a very healthy way of dealing with grief, but it can also turn against us. Has everyone seen the new Star Trek? Anybody hasn't? Okay, earmuffs, because I got a spoiler, so you know. If you don't want to hear, no, John hadn't either. But so in the new movie, we see two people who exhibit identification when they suffer the extreme grief of watching their planet and most of their race be destroyed. Captain Nero, the Romulan, identifies with his people's roots as a fierce warrior and imperial conquerors, and he travels back in time to destroy the Vulcan planet so that Spock will have to experience the same grief that he has experienced. I'm going to say this is an unhealthy form of identification. Spock, on the other hand, identifies with his people's history and love of learning and sets out to rebuild their culture on a new planet. It's very touching, and from the outside at least, it seems totally healthy. A less obvious example might be if someone loses their mother and begins to examine decisions in his life by asking, what would my mother want me to do? If mom was overprotective, xenophobe, who wanted her son to stay protected in the house all of the time, it may be healthier to mourn her in some other way. The disciples identify with Jesus by trying to carry on his teaching and his ministry. From what we can tell, different disciples did this in different ways. 3 of the Gospels may represent 3 different communities, each with a tie to a different disciple. And each of these 3 communities produced very different books. I might say they interpreted Jesus' lives into their own differently. The other concept that was important to me from Cole's book was the idea that mourning is different from grief. Mourning is something you do intentionally. Grief is simply something you suffer. Dr. Cole writes, mourning refers to the process whereby we loosen the emotional attachment to a loss, relocate the loss in our emotional life, and create emotional space for investing anew in relationships and other aspects of living. Mourning is a process that takes both time and intention. Dr. Cole describes 5 phases of mourning: receiving our loss, enduring our loss, adapting to our loss, relocating our loss, and sojourning with our loss. I think identification is a means of relocating our loss, a way for us to embody the one we lost in a compartment of our lives. This embodiment may be a major part of our life, as it certainly was for the disciples, but when we move to a healthy form of identification, our memory becomes an inspiration to us instead of just a pain that we have to endure. I'd like to talk briefly about Cole's final stage of mourning, sojourning with our loss. I think this concept is particularly appropriate as we approach Memorial Day. Sojourning with your loss is to intentionally remember for a period of time and then set the pain of the memory back down. To take the memories out and spend some time with them, but after a while to put them back away, knowing that the memories aren't gone for good, that we can bring them back out and visit them again when we need to. But after our trip, after our sojourn, we need to put them away and go on living. Visits to a grave, writing in a journal, sharing a story with friends, spending a few minutes holding on to a memento. I imagine the photo essay about his father was Philip Toledano's way to sojourn with his loss. My favorite Dixie Chicks song is one called "This Silent House," I also imagine that it is a public example of someone sojourning with their loss. The song is about the lead singer, Natalie Maine's experience with her grandmother. She calls her Nona. She suffered from Alzheimer's disease, and the chorus, she sings this: I will try to connect all the pieces you left. I will carry it on and let you forget. I'll remember the years when your mind was clear, how laughter and life filled up this silent house. I'm certain that everyone here has lost someone they love or suffered grief in another profound way. And I encourage you tonight after our service or tomorrow in private to take a few minutes and sojourn with your loss. Let us pray.
Mark